In 2007, fans of Hall of Fame running back LaDainian Tomlinson wanted to make their voices heard in their concerns about the player. Not about anything that was happening on the field, not anything that you might normally think, no, they were concerned when they heard the possibility that LaDainian Tomlinson would be on the cover of Madden. So much so that one of them created a website called SaveLTFromMadden.com. Now you may be wondering why fans of LT wouldn't want him to be on the video game. It seems like it would be a great honor and very cool to see your favorite player on the cover. That is because of a phenomenon known as the Madden curse, the belief that there is a curse that is taking players that are on the cover of Madden and causing them to have immediate declines or injuries and bad seasons. Is there any validity to this? Today on Kickoff Commentary, we will take a look at all 21 cover athletes, look at their careers before and after the Madden cover, and see if there truly is any validity to the Madden curse. I'm sure many of you are wondering why we're not starting in 2001 with Eddie George. That is because in Europe, they started putting players on the cover of Madden 2 years earlier. This starts with San Francisco 49ers running back Garrison Hearst. His season prior to the cover was pretty solid. He had 1,000 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. His season on the cover was significantly better. 1,570 yards, 7 touchdowns, 535 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. That would be the 49ers record for rushing yards set until Frank Gore broke it in 2006. So you think, great, no curse here, Hearst just put up his best season on the cover of Madden. That seemed to be the case up until the divisional round of the playoffs. In this game, Hearst thoroughly destroyed his ankle so badly that he would miss the next 2 seasons of football entirely. Our first cover athlete suffered an injury that cost him 2 seasons of his career. We're not off to a very hot start here. Madden 2000 cover star Dorsey Levens is interesting in that he had probably the worst season to get onto the cover of Madden that any player has ever had. 115 carries, only 378 yards, and 1 touchdown. His season on the cover was actually pretty solid, 1,034 yards and 9 touchdowns. Although much like with Garrison Hearst, the regular season was not his issue. Levens would never run for more than 411 yards in a season after this year in Green Bay and was out of the league entirely by 2004. Our first cover stateside is Eddie George of the Tennessee Titans. Eddie George was probably the safest bet to be on the cover we'd had so far. He had put up 4 straight 1,200-yard seasons heading into his Madden cover season, and in his cover season, he one-upped it. He put up a career-high 1,509 rushing yards and a career-high 14 touchdowns along with 50 catches. After this, however, much like with Hearst and Levens, it would all go downhill. Eddie George would put up the 4 worst statistical seasons of his career the following 4 seasons, including a disastrous 8-fumble campaign in 2001. Eddie George retired from the NFL entirely by 2004. So far, we have 3 running backs, 3 putting up a solid Madden cover season, all of whose careers ended very quickly after being on the cover. Our first non-running back cover athlete brings us Daunte Culpepper of the Minnesota Vikings. Culpepper earned the cover after a very impressive 2000 season where he threw for 3,937 yards, 33 touchdowns to just 16 picks, and ran for 7 touchdowns. His 2001 season, however, was not as successful. After suffering a knee injury against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Week 12, Culpepper would miss the final 5 games of the season. The following year, Culpepper would throw more interceptions than touchdowns. Although he was able to return to form somewhat in 2004, Culpepper would never throw for more than 6 touchdowns in any single season in the final 5 years of his career before retiring from the NFL in 2009. 2003 brings the first Hall of Famer to the cover of Madden in Rams running back Marshall. By the time that Faulk was put on the cover of Madden, he had won a Super Bowl in 1999 and an NFL MVP award in 2000. His pre-Madden season, he put up 1,382 yards and 12 touchdowns, along with 765 yards and 9 touchdowns receiving. Faulk was unable to reach 1,000 yards rushing in his Madden cover season, and he never would again in his NFL career. Faulk would retire from the NFL after the 2005 NFL season due to needing constructive knee surgery. We now now come to probably the most memorable cover athlete of all time, Michael Vick on Madden 2004. Vick was the most electrifying player in the league, and it earned him the cover. In 2002, his year before the cover, he threw for 3,000 yards, 16 touchdowns, 8 picks, 777 rushing yards, and 8 touchdowns. In his Madden cover season, Vick suffered a broken right fibula in the preseason and missed his team's first 11 games. This is the most direct occurrence of the curse so far, as Vick missed nearly the entire season due to an injury before the season had even started. In 2004, Vick would return to his electrifying, if not unpolished, performance. In 2006, he put up the best year of his career. He played in all 16 games, threw for 2,474 yards, 20 touchdowns, 13 picks, and an absurd 1,039 rushing yards, along with 2 touchdowns. After this, Michael Vick would not play in the NFL for 2 seasons due to, let's just say, outside circumstances. Vick would have a career renaissance under Andy Reid in 2010 with Philly, although that would be the last really good year of his career. Though the injury certainly plays into the curse's favor, it's really up to you if you want to consider anything else bad that happened to Michael as part of the curse itself. I'll leave that one to you, viewer. Madden 05 brought with it the first defensive player in linebacker Ray Lewis. Lewis was coming off of a monster 2003 season with 163 tackles, 6 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, and 2 fumble recoveries. Lewis's 2004 season was pretty much more of the same from Ray Lewis, although it was the first season of his NFL career where he did not record an interception. In 2005, Lewis suffered a torn hamstring that ended his season early in week number 6. After this, Ray Lewis went back to being Ray Lewis, and in his final season in 2012, he won another Super Bowl. This is the first player who seems to have truly been able to duck the curse, or at least avoid its damage for the most part. – 2006 returns us to the quarterbacks with Donovan McNabb. McNabb was coming off the best season of his career by far in 2004, where he put up a career-high completion percentage with 64, passing yards with 3,875, touchdowns with 31, only 8 interceptions, and a trip to the Super Bowl. McNabb's cover season would not be so successful. He would suffer a sports hernia injury later in the season and cause it to miss the team's final 7 games. The following year in 2006, he would suffer an ACL tear and miss the team's final 6 games. McNabb was really never the same after this. He had a couple more decent seasons in Philly before having 2 disastrous seasons in Washington and Minnesota to end his career in 2011. Madden once again went running back for Madden 07 with Shaun Alexander of the Seattle Seahawks. This was a very well-earned cover as he put up one of the greatest seasons in running back history in 2005. 1,880 rushing yards and 27 touchdowns. The Madden gods seemed angry with Shaun Alexander's record-breaking season, as he would suffer a foot injury in week 3 of 2006 and would never rush for 1,000 yards again in his career. He was out of the NFL entirely after the 2008 season, one of the swiftest punishments the Madden curse had ever dealt out. Vince Young has to be the strangest cover athlete in Madden history. His rookie season that earned him the cover of Madden saw him throw more interceptions than touchdowns with an abysmal 51 completion percentage. This was bolstered somewhat by 552 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns, but it still doesn't make any sense. In 2007, his cover season, he put up a better completion percentage at 62.3 and more yards at 2,546, but an abysmal 9 touchdown to 17 interception ratio. After this season, Young would never throw for more than 2,000 yards again and would only finally throw for more touchdowns than interceptions in 2009. Young was out of the NFL entirely by the end of the 2011 season. The question here simply has to be asked. Was there a Madden curse, or was Vince Young simply not very good? I could go either way on this, and I do feel bad because I really did like Vince Young and wanted to see him succeed. But he never played a 16-game season. He never had a good season in his entire career, and he was out of the league in a very, very short time span. Overall, I guess you could blame the Madden curse for some of this, but Young's rookie season wasn't exactly the most promising to begin with. Madden's cover was intended to be a tribute to one of the greatest players of all time. Brett Favre had announced his retirement following the 2007 season, and Madden was going to honor him with the cover of the video game. Unfortunately, as Brett Favre does, Brett Favre decided to unretire before this season and go play for the New York Jets. Surprisingly, the beginning of Favre's Jets tenure was actually not that bad. The team got off to an 8-3 start and looked like they were destined for the playoffs. However, after this, they would lose 4 of their final 5 games to finish 9-7 and miss the playoffs entirely. After this, Favre realized that he had some damage in his shoulder and retired. Until he didn't. That's Brett Favre for you. Madden 10's cover is very different from the other covers of Madden, as it features 2 athletes on the front instead of the typical one. It features 2 competitors from the previous year's Super Bowl, Troy Polamalu and Larry Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald got on the cover for a very impressive 2008 season where he had 1,431 yards and 12 touchdowns. On the other hand, Polamalu got on the cover for a 73-tackle, 7-interception season in 2008. The Steelers would win that Super Bowl, but it was good enough to get both of these guys on the cover. It seems the curse decided to focus on only one player this year, as Larry Fitzgerald would put up a career high of 13 touchdowns in 2009, and has been an effective receiver in the NFL to this day. On the other hand, Troy Polamalu's 2009 season saw him play in only 5 games due to injury, and though he bounced back in 2010, he had faded and was out of the league after the 2014 season. I guess Larry Fitzgerald can consider himself lucky they decided to go with a 2-player cover. We return to quarterbacks for Madden 11 as Drew Brees of the Saints was put on the cover of the game. Brees was coming off of a really solid season in 2009, 4,388 passing yards, 34 touchdowns, 11 picks, but most importantly, the Saints' first and to this point only Super Bowl victory. The curse affected the Saints in a very different way the following season. Drew Brees' numbers were still very Drew Brees-esque, but he put up his career high in interceptions with 22. The Saints went 11-5, which was a good record, and they made the playoffs. Unfortunately for the Saints, in the playoffs, the curse struck in one of the weirder ways possible. The Seattle Seahawks had made the playoffs with a 7-9 record, and should have expected to get demolished by the defending champions. However, thanks to the famous Beastquake run, the 7-9 Seahawks made it to the next round of the playoffs, and the defending champions were going home. Depending on your perspective, the curse was self-contained to just that one season. After this, Brees would throw for 5,000 yards 3 more times. However, as we've seen in the playoffs recently with the Minnesota Miracle and the Roby Coleman hit, the Saints are clearly dealing with some mojo. Could it be Bountygate? Maybe. But I think that if the Madden curse truly does exist, this is why the Saints have had such awful luck in the playoffs the past couple of seasons. Madden 12 brings us the most obvious example of the Madden curse, with Peyton Hillis as its cover athlete. Hillis burst onto the scene in 2010 with a 1,177-yard season. This would be Hillis' only 1,000-yard season in the NFL, as he fell off a cliff almost immediately after the Madden cover. Peyton Hillis was out of the league entirely by the end of 2014. Much like Vince Young, you have to really wonder why Hillis was on the cover at all. His 2010 season was certainly impressive. He was certainly fun to watch, but I don't know that he was necessarily the most deserving. Granted, Browns fans are a very loyal bunch, and they really, I assume, wanted to get their guy to the top. As an Arkansas fan, it was great to see Peyton do well, and I hated to see him do poorly. But that's just how it goes, I suppose, with the Madden curse sometimes. Madden 13 brings us the first solo wide receiver on the cover with Calvin Johnson. Calvin was coming off of a career year in 2011, 96 catches, 1,681 yards, and 16 touchdowns. He followed that up in 2012, his cover year, with probably the best season a receiver has ever had. 122 catches, 1,964 yards, and 5 touchdowns. It seemed that Calvin Johnson had cracked the Madden curse for good. After all, setting the NFL receiving yards in a season record in his cover year kind of debunks that. However, just 3 seasons after this, Calvin Johnson was out of the NFL entirely in 2015, just 9 years into his career. I would wager that the NFL losing Johnson that quickly was the curse in and of itself. If there's anything to take from this, I suppose that Calvin's short career is the only way the curse could affect him for Madden 13. Madden decided to go for an anniversary title instead of the year with the following game, Madden 25. Who, on the Xbox One edition of the game, was covered by Adrian Peterson. Peterson earned this after coming back from an ACL tear in 2012 to run for 2,097 yards and 12 touchdowns, the second most rushing yards in an NFL season in history. Unsurprisingly, there was some drop-off for Adrian the following season. How could there not be, considering he had nearly set the record the previous year, as he ran for 1,266 yards and 10 touchdowns. The Vikings, however, missed the playoffs once again. After this, Adrian was suspended for 15 of the following games the next season for conduct detrimental. Peterson would return to form in 2015 with a 1,400-yard season, and after that he spent 2016 and 17 floundering. This past season in Washington, of all places, Peterson got back to 1,000 yards rushing, and he seems intended to play in the NFL more. It seems the curse affected Adrian in a very different way from other players, but it certainly seems to have affected him at least somewhat. Madden went back to the defensive side of the ball with Madden 15, and Richard Sherman was on the cover. Sherman and the Legion of Boom defense had just obliterated Denver's high-powered offense in the Super Bowl, so Sherman was a natural pick. The Seahawks put together another great season in 2014, and all seemed well right up until this play. I don't care what you say, that Sherman had a good season, that the Seahawks were good. This play is the Madden curse right here. The way that Malcolm Butler plays this so perfectly, that the Patriots just so happened to sub him in just in time to cover this route, that this was the only way that this play could happen, this is on the Madden curse. It laid latent an entire season, let Seattle think they had gotten away with it, until it picked the right moment to strike. At least that's what I think. Since this game, Richard Sherman has dealt with some nagging injuries, but overall has put together several good seasons of football, and it really does seem like that pass on the goal line is the only evidence whatsoever you could find of the Madden curse. We once again go to a receiver for Madden 16 with Odell Beckham Jr. of the New York Giants. Beckham was put on the cover after an amazing rookie season where he had 91 catches, 1,305 yards, 12 touchdowns, and one catch that did not win his team the game. In 2015, Beckham actually put up even better numbers. 96 catches, 1,450 yards, and 13 TDs. Beckham, outside of an injury-riddled 2017, has put up great stats every year of his career. The real question does have to come down to, is there a curse here? And I suppose the answer to that question could be yes, as the Giants only made the playoffs one time in Beckham's career. Now that he's moved on to Cleveland, it seems that we're going to have a lot of time to find out since Odell is still so young. So, is there any Madden curse for Odell Beckham Jr.? I don't really know. If playing on the Giants counts as a curse, then sure. If not, then not really. Madden 17 brings us our first ever tight end on the cover with Rob Gronkowski of the New England Patriots. Gronk earned this after a 2015 season where he put up 72 catches, 1,176 yards, and 11 touchdowns. Though the Patriots did go on to win the Super Bowl in 2016, Rob Gronkowski was not there for the playoff run, and he missed half the games in that season due to several different injuries. Though Gronkowski would return to have 2 more solid seasons and win 1 more Super Bowl in his career, he retired at a younger age than he probably should have due to the mounting injuries. Gronkowski probably would have retired this offseason, Madden cover or not. The way that you had to tackle Gronkowski was either really low or really high, and that caused a lot of injuries to him that were just going to build up over time no matter what. Though the Madden curse didn't ever diminish Gronkowski's talent, missing out on a team's Super Bowl run due to injury due to it is probably something that I guess we could count, but overall Rob Gronkowski certainly doesn't seem to be the kind of person to mind. With Madden 18, for the first time ever, the same team was on the cover of Madden for 2 years in a row, as Tom Brady was on the cover of Madden this year. Going into Tom Brady's exploits would take longer than this video is going to last, but this was the season after the 28-3 comeback in the Super Bowl. In 2017, Tom Brady did what he always did and got the Patriots to the Super Bowl. Although this time, the Patriots were bested by the Philadelphia Eagles. This is where the curse clearly comes in, because I do believe that no just world would allow Philadelphia to win a Super Bowl, and so it had to be a curse at play here. Brady proceeded to rebound the next season, as he always does, and win his 6th Super Bowl championship. The fact that Tom Brady's curse was losing a Super Bowl, then immediately winning another Super Bowl, tells you the kind of life he's had in the NFL, and why everybody seems to dislike the Patriots. For today's video is Mr. Big Chest himself, Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown had another good statistical season in 2018, 104 catches, 1,297 yards, and 15 touchdowns. However, he missed the team's season finale due to not showing up for practices and was benched. The Steelers did not make the playoffs, and Brown has since been shipped off to Oakland due to his antics and taking shots at pretty much every person who has ever worn a Steelers jersey. Does this count as a curse? I guess so if you're the Steelers. They lost Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown in the same offseason, Big Ben is aging with no real replacement in sight, and the team seems to be in a complete flummox. As far as Antonio Brown, I'd wager he's got a blessing. He doesn't have to spend time with Big Ben Roethlisberger anymore. And that was all 22 cover athletes for Madden. After all of that, does the curse exist? Well, let's look at the facts. We had 7 running backs, 7 quarterbacks, 3 wide receivers, 3 defensive players, and 1 tight end. Among our cover athletes, 5 of them put up a better season the year they were on the cover, while 15 of them put up a worse season after they were on the cover. That leaves us with just 2 players who were about the same the year they were on the cover as the year before. So, as you can see, overwhelmingly throughout history, when a player is on the cover of Madden, they will see some kind of decline the next season. But that isn't entirely telling the whole story. When a player is on the cover of Madden, they have usually just had the best season of their career. Them going down in some success level is to be expected simply because it's hard to sustain at the highest level of football for so long. So overall, is there a Madden curse? I can't say for sure. I'll leave that to you guys to decide down in the comment section. Subscribe if you enjoyed today's video. This has been Kickoff Commentary, and be sure to have a great day.